Welcome to Fearless Conversations, a podcast by free thinkers of the world. The content within this episode is intended for mature audiences only.
Hi, I'm Euge. Welcome to Fearless Conversations. I'm with my co-host,
Mariano. Hello, everyone.
And today we are with Lon. Lon is a member of the Jehovah's Witnesses community, and we're going to discuss this religion today. He's going to tell us about it. So welcome, Lon.
Thank you.
Welcome, Lon. Thank you so much for being with us. You're very brave, Lon. Thank you.
We'll see how I stand up, but thanks for the invitation.
So we're very excited to have you here and to discuss Jehovah's Witnesses community and religion. And before we can get to that, we would love you to tell everyone about yourself, about how your life story, how you became to be a Jehovah's Witness and all that.
First of all, different to many religious people who come to religion by their parents, or they're just brought up in a religion. I was agnostic and Jewish family, brought up. By the time I was 15, I was totally agnostic. I never had the courage to say God didn't exist. I didn't feel I knew enough to say that. But I always felt, who knows? And I was an evolutionist. And by the time I was in college, I used to have a lot of arguments, always arguing, very argumentative about evolution and like that. And I'd run into Jehovah's Witnesses, had arguments with them and all, and didn't make much of an impression until finally I started, because of certain things, I started to think about it. And I thought, wait a minute, I am not intellectually capable of believing, here's the intellectual honesty, of believing that every wing of every bee is a product of an accident in nature. So I've looked into evolution. I think the idea of that God created everything that's living, and the idea that everything is a product of biological evolution, these are competing theories. And as far as competing theories go, I would say that the idea that God created, the facts are on that side, and not on the side that things evolved by themselves. It made me think, well, if evolution is not true, there must be a creator. And that was a very sudden and impactful idea.
Yeah.
And there was somehow, I don't remember how, we got together and there was a fellow who I didn't know, and something was said, and he was a character that wasn't, if he had any sympathetic qualities, I couldn't see them. It was more the opposite. So I just took the contrary of everything he said. And he said, don't you believe, and somehow it came out, don't you believe in evolution? I said, no, I don't believe that. Why should I believe that? And I did. I was an evolutionist. And I just said that because he was
you want to
antipatico. He was an obnoxious individual. And well, how can you say that? And so I didn't really know much about the subject. And the only thing I had argued with Jehovah's Witnesses. And so the arguments that I never paid much attention to were the arguments I used against him. And he was flattened. And his friend says, and I didn't know much. I didn't know a whole lot. And his friend says, the guy didn't know what to say. And his friend, don't you realize he's a PhD in philosophy and letters? And I said, as if I knew something, well, he should stick with his theme. It seems he doesn't know much about biology.
Yeah.
And that so I thought, if I do that with arguments I barely understand, I better think this through. And that's what caused me to start thinking it through. The anti-evolution arguments that I had never really thought about, because I was just so prejudiced that I wasn't listening when I had these conversations. So I thought, okay, if I'm not capable of believing in evolution, there must be a creator. If there's a creator, there has to be a manual for the machine. I mean, humans are so complicated. Who makes a washing machine without a manual? You got to have some sort of direction. So I said, well, I don't know if I believe the Bible. Why should I believe the Bible? Why should I believe the Quran, Kojiki, Bhagavad Gita? And I started searching the religious books. I landed on the idea of the Bible, studied the Bible, and I found it convincing. I didn't say, well, there's got to be something, I might as well accept this. I just studied the bare facts of it. I found it convincing for scientifically, prophetically, the Bible has prophecy. And the most important perhaps is what it does for people, how it helps people put aside racial prejudice and hatred and people of all the world. And I was very impressed. I was, I'm from the 60s, well, born before that, obviously, but I mean, in the 60s, we were hippie-ish, and it impressed me Jehovah's Witnesses are neutral to the world conflicts. And
Yeah.
I like
They're neutral and they don't believe in war. They will not fight in wars.
all over the world.
Yeah.
Every country on the earth, they're totally neutral to the political conflicts, and that causes them problems, because if we're politically neutral, then the politicians don't have to take us into account. They can do what they like. And two, if you have a regime like Russia, which is very hard-nosed regime, they now have about 170 Jehovah's Witnesses in jails. Women are 70 who have 6 years condemnation in hard labor. And they call us,
being Jehovah's Witnesses, just for being Jehovah's Witnesses?
they have classified us with terrorists. We are classified extremists, is what they call the Chechen terrorists are also extremists. But one commentator said Jehovah's Witnesses are the most peaceful terrorists that they have in Russia.
Yeah. You will not do Jehovah's Witnesses, can they own a gun?
They could own a gun. There's nothing in the Bible against that, but they don't
Go to war.
don't carry arms, don't go to war. In Ethiopia, Eritrea, there's some witnesses that have been in jail for over 25 years without being charged.
Wow.
Without being charged. I mean,
But they're Muslims?
well, the Eritrea,
Yeah.
I don't know if they're Muslim or Christian. That's a good.
Not sure. Yeah.
Ethiopia is Christian. Eritrea, I believe, is Christian, Coptic, but I'm not sure of that. So anyway, that impressed me about Jehovah's Witnesses. And since then, I've known whites that have been members of Ku Klux Klan, like that, become Jehovah's Witnesses, left their prejudice. I was a missionary in several countries. I was a missionary in Turkey, in Turkey for 3 years, in Spain for 17 years, and Israel for 13 years. So, and then we came back to the States in 2002, and we were in Colorado.
Being a missionary is the word?
Yeah.
Is it like a job, or you have a profession apart from that?
I went to a Bible college in New York called Gilead, And that's where I met my wife. And she was in the class before me. She was going to Senegal, which she did. And so went to the Bible college, it was like 6 months, and then sent to a country. We lived, room and board was taken care of, and we made about, financially, we were supported $150 a month, something like that. So that's how we lived. And then finally, after 3 years, my wife and I, we wrote letters. We have a whole book of letters. Nobody has that anymore. So she came over from Senegal. We were in Turkey. And from Turkey went to Spain. But wherever we were, it's a volunteer work. Our room and board was taken care of. And like I said, we received like a mensuality. You wouldn't call it a paycheck. It was a mensuality of 150 a month or something like that, 200. It would change over time. And that's how I lived for 33 years.
Well, I don't know if it's that important, but you were in 3 or 4 different countries. Where were you? Where did you feel most welcome? Where did you feel safer? Or where did you feel most threatened?
And every country had its, I mean, Turkey is a singular country. That should be on everybody's bucket list. It's an incredible country. And Turks are marvelously hospitable. The food is wonderful. Spain, you can't compare that with anything. You have the ambience of Middle Ages and Toledo and the villages. It's just incredible.
You had that experience with in a Christian nation, a Muslim nation, and a Jewish nation.
Yes.
So that not many people have the
No.
trifecta of religions.
And in Israel, of course, I mean, it's the Bible language. We learned Hebrew, like we learned Turkish, we learned Spanish, we learned Hebrew. And Jerusalem is a bubbling cauldron of religions and people that can't stand each other. It's very, you go through the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and different religions have taken a hold of different parts of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and they can't stand each other. So every night when they close the church, the key goes to a Muslim who lives right next door, who has the key to the church, because nobody trusts anybody.
What, like, so the church is like Jewish, Christian, and Muslim?
But the church of the Holy Sepulchre is supposedly where Jesus is buried. And so you have it, like the Coptics will have a small spot. The Catholics will have a small spot. Orthodox will have a small spot. Wherever you go, everybody has their little corner. I don't know how that started, but they all have a little corner of this church that is very segmented. I mean, it's a very interesting, they built on it. Fascinating place. And one of the main factors in the church that is really a uniting factor, wherever you go, they ask for a contribution. That's a uniting factor.
Yeah. But do they talk to each other? So do they hang out together?
Yeah, I don't think they hang out a whole lot.
Okay.
Like I said, there's not a lot of trust in the whole situation.
Because they're all trying to get the money for themselves, kind of thing.
They're all asking for
They're
contributions.
competing for the money, kind of, right?
Oh my.
Okay.
That's so interesting. And we prepared a few questions before this recording. And the first one was, why is it important to believe in Jesus and God?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And because there's so many religions in the earth, thousands of religions. And why Jesus and why God? There's actually two different questions, because there are people that I know that believe in Jesus. I know for Jews that believe in Jesus and don't believe in God. And I say believe in Jesus in the sense of that his moral character, his message, not that they think he was the Messiah, but they admire him greatly. And many people are that way. Maybe Mariano, you feel, like the things that Jesus said more than the things that God said. I don't know.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of messages there that I think if people really follow them, and Christians specifically, but yeah, go ahead.
So as far as why believe in God, first of all, about 45% of the population on the earth are believers, and they feel that it's important to believe in God because of it gives a sense of, it can create a sense of morality in your life. When I look at, I was starting to get off base before, but the idea there must be a creator, and I'll say why. And I'm going to say the weakest point of an atheistic point of view is denial of a first cause. If you look at the universe, until the 1960s, they had scientifically what they call the steady state theory, where the universe had always existed. And men like Fred Hoyle and other physicists were in harmony with that. Even Einstein liked that idea. The universe had always existed. In the 60s, there had been reason to think that the universe had a beginning, and finally they measured what they call the background microwave radioactivity. And they could see, because of the colors, you have what they call a red shift, that the universe is expanding. Well, it couldn't have been expanding forever. So it had a beginning. And people like Fred Hoyle and Einstein, they finally had to turn around on this. And if the universe had a beginning, here's what it means. Matter, energy, time, and space did not exist. How do you get from nothing? And I'll tell you a way to get from nothing to something, but generally speaking, how do you get from nothing to something? You cannot. It's like what was it, Sound of Music? Nothing comes from nothing, nothing ever could. This is a fact. If you've got nothing, you get nothing. The only way to do that is to redefine the word nothing. And that's what some scientists have done. But nothing is nothing. No time, no energy, no space, no matter. Where did this all come from? And they call it a Big Bang, but the explosive force of the universe is more like a fireworks. You know, like that fireworks every 4th of July? Costs millions of dollars to organize that. A rude explosion cannot create the fine tuning of the universe. So there must be a God, because otherwise, how can we explain all this? For me.
How do you define creator? Maybe that's
Okay.
That would be nice to start there.
So a first cause. That with the power and intellect to make other things. So it would have to be a first cause that it existed alone, existed outside the universe, because it couldn't exist inside the universe.
I'm open to believing in the creator. How do I believe in the creator? Like, first cause could be also the way the Big Bang started. That could be the first cause.
What do you think, Euge?
I think I don't believe there is a creator, but I don't dare to say there isn't. You know, I don't think I have the answer, and I don't think anyone can have the answer actually. But if I would have to guess or choose one option, I would say it was nature. It is very interesting that not. I agree that not you can't get something from nothing, but well, I think it's so much bigger than we know or we understand, and I find that very humbling at the same time. Nature itself is very humbling and is very, I don't want to say the word magical, but sometimes seems magical that we are all here alive, that we have a conscience, and that we can understand how our earth was created. I think that is a miracle. So I'm like in between ideas sometimes.
Uh-huh.
Again, going back to when technology and science were not available, they made up stuff. They made up stuff. They didn't know the earth was round. They didn't know that the earth rotates around the sun, the solar system, the galaxy. They didn't know any of that. And they just made up stories.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. In Job chapter 26, verse 7, it says the earth is hung on nothing. In Isaiah chapter 40, verse 18, it says there's one who is dwelling above the circle of the earth. Circle in Hebrew, goal, indicates a sphere. When they were making up stuff, the Bible was in harmony with what we know today. And these were guys that were, Job was a shepherd. Isaiah was a prophet, but what did he know as far as science goes? So in the Bible, and this answers one of your questions, well, God wants us to love him, he wants us to worship him. Just as any government has the right to impose which side of the street cars should drive on, whether it's the right side or the left side, whether you're in America or England. So the creator of man has the right to impose the best way that people can get together and live together in unity. That's the purpose of the laws that God gives. Worship in the Bible, in Hebrew, it's avodah. Avodah means work. So it's interesting, the idea you have of worship in English or maybe Spanish is somebody on their knees and praying, and maybe in front of an idol or in a church or in somewhere. Hebrew, it's avodah. We do God's will. We do we follow his laws biblically, because it says the love of God means keeping his commandments. And if people would do that, then people could live together in peace. And I'd like to share a thought here. This is why people should worship Jehovah. Now, we're not talking about any God, Jehovah God. And without realizing it, people of most nations tacitly agree. And why do I say that? Because in the United Nations, in front, you have the Isaiah Wall, right in front of the United Nations. And the Isaiah Wall says this. It's a big wall. And it says, they will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning shears. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, nor will they learn war anymore. What a wonderful thing. They put that there, I don't know if it was the 40s or something like that. And then the Russians dedicated a huge statue to a man beating a war implement into something for agriculture in front of the United Nations. What what's interesting is this. At the beginning of the verse, in verse 2, it says this: many nations will go, and this is a prophecy, many nations will go in the last days. No, it says, excuse me, starting over. In the final part of the days, the mountain of the house of Jehovah, or the worship of this God, Jehovah or Yahweh, however you pronounce it, will become firmly established above the top of the mountains. And many people will go and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of Jehovah, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will instruct us about his ways. We will walk in his paths. He will render judgment among many peoples and set matters straight respecting mighty nations far away. And they will beat their swords into plowshares, their spears into pruning shears. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, nor will they learn war anymore. So the idea is that in the last days, and this is the biblical prophecy, hooking it up with other prophecies, God's kingdom would bring peace to the earth, that people of all nations would learn about Jehovah. Jehovah, the God of the Bible, would be a rallying point for people of all nations, that people of all nations would say, we're putting our trust in you as the grand creator, and we will accept your decisions for the international disputes that are going on, and we will no longer make war. We will no longer learn war. And then you have that very beautiful piece that's on the Isaiah wall, where instruments of war would be used for beneficial purposes. Now, the prophecy, whether a person believes it or not, that's a wonderful prophecy. We'd like to see that to happen. And right after that, it says, for all the nations will walk in the name of their God. You need a rallying point for mankind to come together. That is a reason why people should worship Jehovah. There's no other book that I know of, religious book, that offers, that predicts the outcome where people of all nations would worship Jehovah. And so the whole Bible message is God's kingdom will bring peace. And then in the New Testament, Jesus is part or the king of that kingdom, and that man's rule, political nations, will be displaced, and God's rule would put peace on earth. That's a risk that someone has to take, because you have to look at it and say, well, let me go back. The biblical message is what I stated, that God's kingdom will put better conditions on the earth. That's for sure. And
we don't know when, right?
We do think these are the last days because of the conditions.
So
we look at these, because it says in the last part of the days, we look at these as the last days. So
is this your religion waiting for these last days?
No, we believe the conditions.
Is that the rapture, or?
No, rapture is something else.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
So in Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24, verse 14, that the good news of the kingdom would be preached in all the earth, and then the end will come. And we present a message. The message is one that people should want to look into. Honest and sincere people say, okay, well, wait a minute. I don't believe this. Like a lot of people would say to us in Israel, I don't agree with what you're doing. I don't like it. Come on in, let's have a cup of coffee and talk about it.
Yeah.
If you're talking about everlasting life, goodness grief, living forever on a paradise earth where there be no racism, no war, no hatred, perfect health, this should be interesting. If it isn't, Why isn't it? So people have a responsibility. And if God is going to, a responsibility to respond to a message that is free. Last year, we said we're 8.5 million Jehovah's Witnesses. Last year, Jehovah's Witnesses talked to others 1.5 billion hours. How do you pay for that? It's all free. No nation can pay for that. We conducted 5.5 million Bible studies, teaching people the Bible free of charge. It's amazing. It's all done. It stimulates dialogue. People accept it or not, it makes them think. They'll say to a Jehovah's Witness, well, you know, you people don't believe in hellfire. It's true, we don't. Can we talk about it? Well, yeah. So we have a dialogue and we open up and we talk about, why don't Jehovah's Witnesses believe in hellfire? What does the Bible say about that? Would a loving God torment people forever? Is that really what the Bible teaches? So this is a time of judgment. We do believe that. And there will be a time when God removes the governments, takes away their authority to govern, and then Jesus will rule over the earth and bring peace and paradise to the earth. Things will change a lot before then. And so people will see things squaring up more than we see them today. For example, when I used to talk to people 25 years ago, 10 years ago, and we'd say, these are the last days, we should want to learn about God. They'd say, business as usual, things have always been bad. People don't say that to me anymore. Things have changed so much. The world seems to be coming apart at the seams wherever you look. And so it's a time of judgment. People have to make a decision. And God is a judge. I'm not. I don't judge people. And the other question is, well, has everybody heard the message? So God can judge people as he wants. I'm not a judge. And I would, far from me, it's an uncomfortable seat. Moving on about Jesus, who's a very attractive figure. Mahatma Gandhi loved Jesus. Mahatma Gandhi, was a prime minister of India. When India and Pakistan were divided, he was finally assassinated. And he was a Hindu, and he loved Jesus, and he loved the Sermon on the Mount. And he said to a British ruler at that time, he said, when your country and mine shall get together on the teachings laid down by Christ in this Sermon on the Mount, we shall have solved the problems not only of our countries, but those of the whole world. So that's powerful. When you think, well, what did Jesus teach in the Sermon on the Mount? Shouldn't I get to know it? So that was the question, why believe in Jesus and God?
That's our first question.
That's the first one. We have another 9 to go.
But wait, since we are getting to know the Jehovah's Witnesses religion, do Jehovah's Witnesses believe in eternity and eternal life after death? How is that?
Okay. I was just going to finish my sentence of when I said about the ransom and God's kingdom.
Oh, yeah.
I think all religions, they appreciate Jesus. Religions, not individuals, obviously. I think we've heard that. But in religions, appreciate Jesus as a ransom sacrifice, but not necessarily as king of God's kingdom. And this is why the religions people in religions get pulled in to what Mariano mentioned previously would be the Christian nationalism and into the insurrection that we saw and the hatred and willing to violate all principles because they look at their political beliefs as part and parcel of their religious beliefs. And that's unfortunate because God's kingdom is separate. Jesus said, my kingdom is no part of this world. And that's one thing that Jehovah's Witnesses has protected us from all of that. And we were in Nazi Germany, there were 35,000 Jehovah's Witnesses. 1/3 of them were put into concentration camps. 1,500 were executed. They wouldn't say Heil Hitler. Heil means holy. Why wouldn't they? Because Jesus said, my kingdom is no part of this world. That's our stand. And it would be better for everyone if the different Christian religions would realize that. And they wouldn't be sucked into the political turmoil that exists. Okay. Going on to the next point about eternity. Go ahead,
By the
Mariano.
way, that's a huge point, because that's where you have this division. So you could be a Muslim, and they associate all these Muslim nations, Islamic nations that associate their religion with the government and politics. They blow themselves up and they go to wars, thinking that that's what their God wants. But you also have the Israelites and the Israel government that identify their Judaism or Jewish religion with their territory and justify invading Palestine and other territories. And then you have the Christians. So all these religions, that's where Jehovah's Witnesses does feel like, okay, I can. It's easier for me to accept at least that the Jehovah's Witnesses, they're not politicizing and going after other people and trying to convert them in an aggressive way, like colonizing or basically colonizing or taking over with force like they used to, like the Crusades and Christianity, how they invaded the Americas and all these other places. So at least, but you're still trying to convert people because you believe that if you need to get the whole planet believing in your religion.
No, not at all.
Well, what happens to the other guy?
No. What we do is we're giving a message to the people. People make their own decisions. We don't want to convert the earth, nor do we feel that's part of the biblical prophecy. But we do want to get a message to everyone so they make an intelligent decision on what they want to do, if they want to look into it, not look into it. But
what do you think happens to the people that don't believe in the message? What do you think happens to them? What does the religion think happens to those souls? Is soul part of the religion? Do you believe in the soul?
okay, that's a good question. So, and this is what goes to what you asked before, Euge. And here's a huge difference between the Bible and other forms of theology, religious teaching. The Bible says, God said to Adam, from dust you are, to dust you return. So the question has to be asked, where was Adam before God created him? Didn't exist. When Adam died, he went to non-existence. So God created humans. The word soul, nephesh in Hebrew, means a living, breathing individual. When a person dies, they're dead. Dead. So death is the opposite of life. If there was a soul that was immortal, and take note, the Bible never puts two words together, never. Immortal soul. Those two words are not ever in the Bible. And another text, Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 5 says, the living know they will die. This is a fact. The dead don't know anything. The idea of a resurrection is a biblical idea. There will be a time when dead people are brought back to life. That flies in the face of the idea of an immortal soul. If there's an immortal soul, then it's in heaven or wherever it is. And then the resurrection, does it have what? Those two ideas don't coincide. So in John chapter 11, Lazarus had died. Martha, Jesus goes, he'd been dead 4 days, and Jesus says, your brother will rise. And Martha says, I know my brother will rise in the resurrection in the last day. So it's interesting that people, Catholics, Protestants, of Christian religions, they all believe in the immortal soul, and they all believe in the resurrection of the last day. Those two things can't be put together. So biblically, when a person dies, they're dead. They're not suffering, they're not thinking, they have no conscience, no pain. And then there's a time when God promises he'll bring the dead back to life. That means he has to remember every individual. He has to be a God of love, to care enough about each individual, to remember that individual and recreate. The resurrection is a recreation of that individual where they live again. So we would recognize our parents or loved ones that have been lost. And so that's a biblical teaching. So you have to be aware then, okay, you have to think, if when you die, you're dead, how can there be a hellfire? There can't be. The idea of eternal torment is not in the scriptures. The idea that you can't have morality, and this is a very, I would say, a real difference with Jehovah's Witnesses. You can't have morality without frightening the people into doing what's right. I would say it's totally wrong-headed. You get morality by drawing people by God's love and his kindness. That's what, and then people voluntarily do what is correct, because like the Bible says, love your God with your whole heart, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. So if you love your neighbor, you don't want to harm your neighbor. You want to respect their rights, their life, their resources. That's an advantage in Christianity, I think. And I think, unfortunately, some religions are missing that because of the emphasis on hellfire. And that's unfortunate.
So I like the message of loving your neighbor and loving each other, and that should be the message, that we should love each other and accept each other and forgive each other. There's all these messages that I believe as a humanist, as that humans, we should do more to help each other than to fight and hurt each other. When you tie in God, then you say, why does he want this love? Why does he want this attention? What is the reward that? So I don't know if you, I don't think you answered the question. Is if you don't believe in God, then he will not bring you back. Is that the way it works?
No, because the resurrection is for biblically, the resurrection is for the vast majority of mankind. There may be some that were so bad that God recognizes no need to recognize, no need to resurrect them because they're not going to change. But the vast majority of mankind biblically will have a resurrection.
So I'll be resurrected no matter what.
You will be resurrected no matter what.
Okay, good. Just in case.
Is that a question or is that a statement? Is that a whole statement?
It's both, because I didn't kill anybody. I try to be a good person and stuff, but you know, I'm just not gonna. It's hard for me to believe in that, and
well, here's
I don't really care. I like also the idea what you said, that you die, you die. You don't feel anything. There's no hell. You're not going to be tortured. You're not going to. That I don't have to be good because I'm scared that God's going to punish me.
Yes, that's true. God,
I'm going to be good because I feel that that's what you want for the human species. You want it's in our nature to be good, and then we learn how to
And that's a more mature and respectful way to teach or to believe, comparing with other religions. I feel that religion considers people that are not part of the religion in a more respectful way, instead of saying, oh, if you don't believe in us, this and this will happen to you. That's a more childish approach. What does the Jehovah Witness religion think about being gay or lesbian? What does the religion think about sexuality? Does the religion live in sin? How does it see it?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's a hot button. It's a hot button issue today. I think let me divide it. Okay, so divide and conquer. Are witnesses against gays and lesbians? And the answer is no. We're not against gays and lesbians. I want to use that in another sense. We don't enter the politics of it. There are some people that enter the politics, or, you know, gays are bad, lesbians, or this should be in this. We're neutral to the politics of it. Should gays be allowed to marry? Shouldn't they be allowed to marry? Lesbians, whatever. We're not into it. Biblically, is it a sin? Yes. And I have known, and I know that might be difficult or seem intolerant. This is a biblical idea. We go with the Bible. I have known gays and lesbians who have become Jehovah's Witnesses. We define gays and lesbians as a practice, not as a personal preference. So a person might feel, well, a woman might say, I like women. Well, fine. Is she practicing that? Carrying that out, reflecting it in her moral life. It'd be the same, for example, a man is not married, but he wants to have sexual relations with women. But we feel the Bible is clear. Sexual relations are condoned, are accepted in a marriage relationship, not outside.
But what are the consequences of being a sinner, or the sin? What does a sin mean?
In Hebrew, sin means to miss the mark. Missing the mark. So why does a person sin? A person might sin because they're weak, because they fell into a situation that pulled them in. Could be a number of different things. So what we do is, when someone falls into a situation that is negative biblically, we do our best to help the person. So
there's no punishment.
Yes.
Of the sinner. There's a punishment.
Yes.
What's the punishment?
The punishment is disfellowshipping, where if a person says, I've known the case, person says, look it, it's true, I'm doing this, and I know it's wrong, and I want to do it. Well, it's not good for him to be in the community.
Okay.
So they're separated from the community.
They're banished.
And they can always come back if they change their habits. Because if you have somebody that's a busybody, for example, somebody that's going around, a young man that's going around from flower to flower, you can corrupt a congregation. That's not good. So the congregation has to be clean. And the concept is that Almighty Creator uses people that live in a moral structure in which He created people to live within. So I don't know if I've answered the question.
I didn't understand if it's seen as a sin to be gay, for example, to have sex with someone from the same sex. Is that sin?
Clearly. And I mean, I've got people, I have a relative who's trans. I deal with them, the same loving way I always have. And with the family that supports them, none of my family are Jehovah's Witnesses. So they're Jewish, and we all get along. They respect me. They respect my ideas. I'm quite clear. If they ask me, well, if you can find a skeleton of somebody a few thousand years old, and they will tell you, oh, this was a girl who was 15, because of the DNA. DNA discloses if a male or female, and people are born like that. Now, today, there's a very confusing situation, and I used to do drive-alongs with the police as an interpreter down in Denver. And there was a growing situation the police would talk to me about where kids 14, 15 were trying out to see, well, am I gay? Am I lesbian? Because kids in a certain age are very vulnerable. They don't know exactly who they are. And with all the propaganda and all the stuff they're receiving, this is absolutely normal. Go ahead and try it. And teachers telling kids that are 5 years old, you don't know if you're a boy or a girl, you have to find out. And I don't think that's positive. I don't think it's positive. And I think there's a biology to us. We're born a certain way, and that's in our genes, that's in our DNA. But what happens with somebody who develops another way of life? That's a different situation. It has to be looked at. But like I say, I've known people. One individual was a transvestite, and this was in Mallorca, in Ibiza, and he was a live-in boyfriend of a cleric in the island. And somebody talked to him about the Bible, and he dressed like a woman, high heels, everything. And when he found out the Bible is not in favor of that, he changed. And after a few years, he got married. I knew him when he was married, when he had his son. I said, well, how is that now with you? He said, let's be frank. Once you break down certain barriers, you're always vulnerable, always vulnerable. But I look at myself every night in the mirror, and I can take my hat off to myself. I'm pleased with myself. Loved his wife, loved his son. These are people that have not been forced into anything. This is their decision. And I think that's fair enough. That's the way we look at it.
Yes, it does. It disappoints me, of course, to see that it's seen as a sin, because I think it's a religion that is very, I admire that you don't believe in hell or eternity. And for me, that's very modern in comparison to other religions that I know. I don't know too many. Well, like I have most of the circle I grew up in are were raised as Catholics or Jewish, and that's it. We don't have, I don't know, such a big variety of religions. Many of them are gay or lesbian, and they choose to walk away from religions because of these thoughts, because of them being told that what they love is not good, or it's a sin, for example. So I find that always to be something that pushes me away from religion.
Could I comment on something you said, just as a
Yes.
disappointed? I'm naturally disappointed. And then you said, well, the other things the witnesses believe are modern. I would just comment on those two words, disappointed and modern. And I go back to the idea of free thinker that we started out. This is why I start out there. Disappointed is because of preconceived idea that the Bible isn't true. If you were to examine the Bible and find out that it's true, you would say, wow, I have to change my idea. The second thing I would say is modern, in your parlance, equals good. I don't think that's necessarily correct. Modern is not necessarily good. I think that's a preconceived idea. So I think what we're talking, or the way we're talking, is challenging to all of us. And do we have to say that modern is good? Not necessarily. I mean, Mariano says, well, for so many years they believed in such nonsense. However, we showed in the Bible that when they were believing in nonsense, the Bible said the earth is round and it's hung on nothing. There's other things as well. The quarantine. The Jews had a law, quarantena, to be separated when you're ill. So when the Black Plague hit, the Jews were affected much less than everyone else in Europe because they separated. The Bible said that. So the Bible was a very important source at that particular time.
That's not what Christians believe here in this country. They're anti-vaccine, anti-mask.
Absolutely. Jehovah's Witnesses, we have a governing body. When this all came out, and Mariano and I talked about this in 2020, the witnesses said, we're canceling all our meetings. We're going to meet on Zoom. All our assemblies are canceled, and going door to door, in-person Bible studies, canceled. We're doing that on Zoom. So that separation probably saved tens of thousands of lives. And mask up and keep separate and like that. But that was based on Proverbs, where it says that the wise person sees the danger and goes the other way. So
yeah, but you can also, I didn't base it on the Bible, I based it on the science.
okay, that's fair. But I'm just saying, so here we have the Bible, that's been beneficial. And so my suggestion would be to everybody, examine it. Find out if it's true.
There are parts of the Bible that talk about stoning homosexuals, stoning to death women who are unfaithful. There's genocide when God decides to drown millions of people, women, children, and only save Noah. And so you can kind of pick the nice parts and quote them and stuff, and you can also see that the Bible has a lot of violence and a lot of death and a lot of things that don't come from a loving God. And then this thing about gay people is that you assume they have a choice. I mean, maybe they have a choice not to have sex with, but they don't have a choice in their sexuality. They're born like that, and we should accept them like that, and we shouldn't stigmatize them as sinners. They're just love them, accept them. But if you're in your community, you say, oh, no, you can't love somebody, you can't have sex with somebody your own sex, you gotta go. Then that's a way to not be accepting, inclusive, and loving towards this type, somebody who doesn't believe in traditional man-woman relationship. So, I mean, that's nice that I really like Jehovah's Witnesses, that they don't politicize a religion. They believe in separation of church and state, which is huge, because then you're not forcing people to pray the way you want them to pray. You're not forcing them to put their hand in the Bible, to swear the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Why do I have to put the hand in the Bible to just tell the truth? Or, in this country, you put "In God We Trust" in the currency, and they want to put it in the judicial or government buildings. Why are they imposing their religion? That's not freedom of religion. That's freedom to force everybody else into the way you believe, or the way in the God you believe. So that's the part I like about Jehovah's Witnesses, that they want to separate them, and you don't want to go kill other people in other nations, saying that your God is better than their God, things like that, and that you don't believe people should be good by causing them fear of hell, eternal suffering, and you just want them to love, and that's the message. Because we do have a question about that. What can kind of connect the different religions in a positive way, instead of dividing them based on stories? Because you mentioned Christians and Hindu, like you don't believe in reincarnation, so there's a division there.
There's a division. I could never, there's certain things I cannot, what's the word? I can't harmonize. For example, with admiration for people of religions, many good people in all religions, I shouldn't have to say that. It's a fact. But I cannot harmonize jihad with turn the other cheek, or he who lives by the sword will die by the sword. There's no harmony there for me. There's no harmony for me with the dead know nothing with reincarnation. So again, what I would say to people that have your questions, I'm talking to both of you, find out if the Bible is true. I mean, I know, Mariano, I think in some cases you've made a decision, and I would like to see more of an openness to listen to the reasons and discuss everything in its context. For example, how can God kill millions of people in the flood? Well, first of all, how do you know there are millions of people? I mean, I think people form their prejudices because of context, where they've grown up, the way other people live, and because of misinformation. Millions of people died. Well, how many people died in the flood? That's a good question. And let's look at today. If God will clean the earth of people that he considers evil and bring peace where people live in harmony on a paradise earth, how else can you get there, Mariano? I don't see any way of getting there. I like your idea. Let's all come together. Let's all embrace and talk and have dialogue. I see the world going the other way. So I don't see any other solution than a source outside of mankind, not part of mankind, to impose the peaceful conditions we would all like to see. So my suggestion to people that have, well, the Bible, this or that, those are all justifiable questions. Take the time to look into it. I teach the Bible for free. I'm always open. I'm always open.
Put your phone number, your Zoom, and you're going to have
the Bible.
you,
And we
gonna have,
a website, jw.org. That is the most translated website in the world. It's open to 1,065 languages, or 1,068, it might be wrong. And you have free online Bible studies where you do it at your own time, your own convenience. You don't have to deal with another human asking questions or anything like that. And it has 238 translations of the Bible. You can have it in your own language. And videos for teenagers, for families that might need a little bit of help in family difficulties, which there always are. it's a wonderful website. It's a great resource that they've made available for everyone, always free, no money charged for it. So take advantage, and it's the best deal going, best deal in town.
Yeah.
What we have in common, I think there's many points in common. I brought out some things that are not in common that I can't justify or harmonize, but I think there's a lot of things in common. In my life, I've spoken to people of all faiths. That's an exaggeration. Many faiths, many people, no faith, people very much imposed, people very much in favor, religious leaders, political leaders, people that were famous writers and stuff like that about the Bible. So I've had an opportunity to talk. I think one thing that we have in common with everyone is hope. We all like hope. Hope is a wonderful thing. And we see, like I said, the world coming apart at the seams. And the idea that God's kingdom would bring better conditions to the earth, I think that's positive. I talk to people and they say, I don't know, but it's a nice thought. At least it's a nice thought. It's better than, I don't like this, the crazies here in this part of the government, or I hate this, or I hate this. God's kingdom, with Jesus as the king of that kingdom, will bring better conditions to the earth. That this is why Jesus said the Lord's Prayer. After he said, let your name be sanctified, he said, let your kingdom come, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And in saying that, it's a very radical prayer, because your will, as if you hear the echo of, instead of the governments that are ruining this earth and mankind, let your will be done. So that's always radical. And that's why the Christians in the first century were very persecuted, because they wouldn't take part in the Roman armies. Celsus criticized them for that. And I think if you talk to a person who's a non-believer, I think that's a good point to have in common. Is there a God? Isn't there? It's a good conversation. Might not be, the person might not believe, but I learned from that person, he can learn from me. Dialogue is a second point. We have hope. We have dialogue. Jehovah's Witnesses are all for dialogue. Whether the person agrees, doesn't agree, that's another point. With a religious person, you've got the Creator, Bible, morality. What does the Bible teach? What doesn't it teach? And I think those are points in common. And we talk to everybody. And before they got bin Laden, the joke was, why didn't they ask Jehovah's Witnesses? They must have talked to him wherever he is.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
So hope and dialogue, I think those are things that we can, if we don't agree, at least we talk. I think that's important.
So yeah, thank you so much, Lon. You definitely, it's amazing to talk to somebody that's dedicated their life to the Bible and talking about it and learning it. That shows that that you have that passion for living, you said, by your conscience and your values. I agree with the hope. I agree with dialogue. That's why we're doing this. And we also talked before about storytelling, how the power of stories, and the Bible it's all about stories. So for some reason, humans can connect more with stories instead of somebody lecturing them. They connect with listening to a story and then coming up with their own conclusion and things about like that. So I also believe these concepts of love. I don't need God to love. And I do love family. I love friends. I love humans. I love the planet. I love justice and being fair. All these values and morality, I don't worry about being resurrected or living, going to hell. I do believe, I'm glad you mentioned that when you die, you're dead. You don't feel anything. You don't think anything. So for me, that's kind of living in peace, because you're not you anymore. You're dead, and you don't have to worry about that. And then I don't know why humans want to make up stories either through reincarnation or going to heaven, like the Mormons. They believe in this heaven. They're going to be with all their loved ones. I don't know, drinking tea or something. So I don't want to be a disrespectful. I just think every religion comes up with stories about the afterlife, and they have no idea. Even Jehovah's Witnesses, you have no idea what's going to happen after you die, and whether you're going to come back to the planet. There's absolutely no proof of that. So that's where I don't connect, and that's where it's like, okay, maybe I believe in that you're dead. That part that you don't politicize religion, I believe in that. The dialogue, the hope, the love. So that's, you just added some things to what unites humanity. And also there's inclusion, acceptance. That's why when you start excluding LGBTQ, then that's going to be tough for a big group of people to accept that. Yeah. So, but dialogue is huge, and that's why I really appreciate the way you're informed and you've studied, and also that you were agnostic, coming from a Jewish family, but now you like the part about the Bible and maybe following the Bible more literally. Is that fair to say? The literal following of the Bible. Yeah. So anyway, I hope this interview, just like once we're done, I'm gonna be thinking a lot of the stuff that you said, and hopefully the people that are gonna watch this also can reflect on that, and they might go to your website and read more about the Bible, and maybe connect more with that message, or they might say, oh, I want to follow a different message. So that's the part about freedom of thought, to choose, freedom of expression. That's where I come with free thinkers, like, let me decide what I'm in harmony with, things like that. So anyway, that's how I would close this interview from my perspective. Okay.
Thank you, Lon, for joining us today. You were very generous to come and have this conversation with us and explain your point of view and your religion. It's really a pleasure to have the opportunity to have a dialogue. Dialogue, I agree, it's hope and it's great. I believe everyone deserves to be happy and live by their choices, by their religion, by their sex choices, as long as they don't hurt or judge others. So it's been really nice talking to you, and thank you for joining. If you liked this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will be seeing you next time in our next episode. Thank you, Lon.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Lon.
This is the end of our episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.